So what I thought I might do, and thank you for this opportunity, was just to give you a little bit of an insight into Congress's and the government's response to COVID. You know most of the story, but being in this context allows me to maybe put a little bit of a partisan sheen on it, something that I've been loath to do outside of venues like this one, because obviously when the country is going through what it is going through right now, when our state is going through what it's going through right now with, sadly, I think we're either crossed or will cross 2,000 fatalities, you set aside your partisan concerns and do your best to unite. But let me start by saying, and I know that some of you have heard this, but I haven't been advertising this, but you should be so proud of our party right now. The reason for that is that as Democrats and led by Speaker Pelosi in the House of Representatives, we have set aside all of our concerns, to be euphemistic, with this president, to work with the Republicans, to work with the White House, for which we have scant respect, to deliver an unprecedented response to a pandemic like we have never seen before. And you would think that would be kind of a low bar or something we wouldn't necessarily need to celebrate. But in my relatively short career in public service, I've now seen two bailouts, two stimuluses, if you will. In 2009, we did this as well, when Barack Obama was a brand new president and the economy was on its knees because of the financial crisis and all of the insanity in the mortgage markets. The first thing that the new president needed to do was to restart the economy. And you will recall that Mitch McConnell at the time said, no, we're not giving you a win. Our number one priority is to prevent you from being a two-term president. That's what he said. Speaker Pelosi and the Democrats could have taken a similar tack with President Trump, and yet we didn't. In a record matter of time, 4 weeks ago, we passed the CARES Act, a $2.2 trillion economic rescue package. And just last week, I was in DC to do phase 2 of that, which was a $500 billion replenishment of a bunch of those programs. It took 5 months 10 years ago, 5 months to come up with a $787 billion stimulus program, the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. And after 5 months of negotiation, when Americans were losing their jobs and losing their homes and watching their retirement savings evaporate, 5 months later, we got a $787 billion plan together. We received 3 votes in the Senate for that plan and 0 votes from the Republican side on that plan. 5 months. Contrast that to what just happened. Speaker Pelosi and the Democrats worked assiduously with the Republicans to get this rescue package done. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of reasons to be proud of the Democratic Party. That to me is one of the top 10, because what we are experiencing and seeing these last 2 months is unprecedented. And it was time for people of goodwill to put aside their political ambitions and their partisan concerns to do what we did. Now, I'm not saying that what we did was perfect. We're learning as we go. But we have been working as hard as we can to try to get the economic resources out there to help individuals, to help small businesses, to help nonprofits, to expand the unemployment insurance system. And we still are taking sort of shots for it, right? You'll remember what happened a week and a half ago when the Paycheck Protection Program loan program ran out of money. The president, Mitch McConnell, said we need to do $250 billion. And we said as Democrats, hey, we do need to do that, but we also need to make sure we've now learned that too much of that money is going to the large businesses, the sophisticated businesses. We need to have a set aside for the smallest of the small businesses. We need to have a set aside for women and minority-owned businesses. And we're not going to say yes until you agree to that. And by the way, the hospitals, which are doing heroic work right now, are in a lot of trouble and they need some money. Well, the other side was just honest, saying this, why would you play politics with this? That's what they accused us of doing when we said we're going to make sure that some of this rescue money goes to the smallest of the small businesses. We're going to take care of our hospitals and our community health centers. But at the end of the day, we got it done. And again, I think that should be a source of great pride for our party. 2 other things I want to say before I wind up. We have to learn from what we are going through right now. And there are at least three learnings that we as Democrats can embrace and that we should embrace at every level. Number one, we need to be much better prepared. We need to not do things like underinvest in the Connecticut Department of Labor, which has been fighting heroically with 40-year-old software to try to get unemployment insurance to people who need it to eat. We need to start investing in those things which we hope never to have to use, but which we may and which will save lives, number one. Number two, this crisis has highlighted in about as stark terms as possible the inequities in our system. And I'm talking about stuff that is about life or death right now. The fact of the matter is, when you look at the statistics, if you are African American or Latino or an immigrant, you are much more likely to die of coronavirus than if you are not. Some of our people have good access to healthcare, others do not. Students from affluent environments are working on expensive laptops doing distance learning. Kids at Norwalk Community College and some of our less advantaged kids don't have that as an option. And so learning number two is we need to not forget the inequities that have been cast into sharp relief by this virus when we recover, because we will recover. And when that happens, we need to not forget the urgency of fixing these inequalities. It's not just about income anymore. It is about life and death. It is about what kids learn and what kids do not learn. The last thing I want to say, and there's lots of lessons here, but I've had a relatively short career in public service, and this is the second time I have watched major bailouts for the private sector. And I am beyond irritated by the fact that it is a one-way street for many of our private corporations. They get lots of tax cuts when Republicans are in charge, as we saw 2 years ago. Their tax rates go from 35% to 21%. And when the chips are down and they need help, taxpayer dollars go to them. Go to the airlines, go to the large corporations, go to the small businesses. That is not how we need to be spending our money in the future. The way we need to be spending our money in the future is addressing the inequities that I highlighted there, which leads me to my very last point, which is a political point. And again, I thank you for the opportunity to make this case because given what's happening on the outside here, we need to be always unifiers and maybe look past some of those partisan concerns we have. But never, ever has it been so clear, as if it hasn't been clear every single day since January of 2017, how important this November is. President Trump is beyond unfit to be president of the United States. He's unfit to be doing anything in any position of responsibility. And if you didn't believe that through the impeachment, if you didn't believe that through the day in, day out nepotism, if you didn't, you know what, when he told America that maybe they ought to think about drinking disinfectant or injecting disinfectant, we wouldn't tolerate that in a mayor of a two-horse town. And yet the president of the United States does that kind of thing on a daily basis. I know I don't need to make that case to you, but I'm feeling, in politics, there, you stay paranoid. But I'm feeling pretty good about the unity that I'm seeing in our party. And I know that there are lots of supporters of Senator Sanders and Senator Warren and other candidates that are very disappointed about where we are today, but I'm starting to feel pretty good about the unity that we're starting to see. And that's beyond essential because not only do we need to win the presidency, we need to win the United States Senate. Remember what I said about Mitch McConnell. If we have a President Biden, God willing, we need a Senate that will not dedicate itself to stopping the policies of President Biden and the Democrats. The president basically had two things politically, right? He had an economy that was doing pretty well, that quite frankly he inherited from a two-term Democratic president, and a roaring stock market, I guess. Well, he doesn't have either of those two things again. He doesn't have those things today. And he had the usual bigotry. He had the usual bigotry against African Americans, against immigrants, you name it. My theory is that you can make Americans sort of cotton on to that for some limited period of time. But in the face of a coronavirus crisis, which is all about our unity, and not just our unity as Americans, but our willingness to work with other countries abroad, that kind of bigotry, to me, I have enough faith in the American people to think that that's just not going to sell. the way it might have sold in 2016. So again, my slight inkling of optimism about what happens in November should not in any way diminish the work that we're going to need together. And I can't tell you how honored and privileged I feel that I'll be able to do it with all of you. We have the election of our lifetime coming up in November. And I am enormously grateful to all the good work that we've done together in the past. And I'm just beyond excited about the wonderful work we're going to do between now and November. So again, Louisa, thank you for giving me a few minutes. If it's consistent with your agenda, I'd be delighted to take up a couple of questions, but I know you have a big agenda, so happy to do whatever works for you guys.
I had myself on mute. Congressman Himes, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us and for your leadership. We are so thankful to have you in the House of Representatives, and we only hope to be able to see you in person soon. If there's, I can maybe do 2 questions. That's if Lieutenant Governor Weisswitz, are you jumping on another call soon, or do you? Okay. Does anybody have a question for Congressman Himes?
That would be my like ideal vacation.
And we have to perfectly match.
Anyone? Okay, Congressman Himes, I think.
Yeah, hi, Jim.
Oh, there's the question.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say, fabulous job. I am, as a local Dem, I am so proud of you and the adult way that you have had to deal with this man-baby moron that is in charge, and temporarily. And I'm glad to hear that you feel some confidence that there's going to be a change. And I personally have been just absolutely amazed that the real leadership of our society has come from our society itself. We have responded, the 98% of people who are actually observing the rules for the benefit of one another. There is an underlying social value there that has not been destroyed by Agent Orange. And consequently, I just want to say how happy I am that you were a part of the wave of change that is going to wash him out of the national bathroom.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Robert.
Anybody else? One more question? Although we have a question here, Congressman, about how we should campaign with the virus.
Hey, Lisa, Kevin Peppas has a question too. His hand's up.
And so did Diane Keefe.
So
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, very, very quickly, Eloisa, we're obviously going to need to figure that out. We are not going to endanger our brothers and sisters to campaign. So, I think we're going to use social media as we are doing right now in ways we never anticipated. I think we're going to need to be really clever about expanding out our individual social networks because, again, remember, the most powerful thing we do when campaigning is not making a phone call to somebody you don't know or writing a postcard to somebody you don't know. The most powerful thing you do is call and talk to people that you do know. So we're going to need to figure out how to really turbocharge that. Look, God willing, maybe in the fall, we'll be actually able to do some of the traditional things that we've always done, come together carefully, maybe knock on some doors. But, one of the reasons we have to be proud of being Democrats is that we are a fact-based party that believes in science and cares about people. So we're not going to take risks with people's health, and we're going to be innovative and creative and reach out to people and tell the story of what we think this country has been and can yet be.
Congressman Himes, this is Christopher Bailone. Thank you for calling me a couple months ago, congratulating me on the election of the DTC. Sorry, I missed your call. The one question and a comment, the one thing I want to understand is how are we ensuring that through this coronavirus, we are protecting immigrants, we are protecting folks who are going through the immigration process. My husband is an immigrant. We are applying for his removal of conditions on his green card. And there are so many mixed messages coming out of Washington about the impact that these executive orders that the president is signing on this process. I mean, before the coronavirus hit, we are looking at years of delays in this green card process because of other policies that this administration has put in place. But now that the coronavirus has hit, it is causing so much uncertainty, and frankly, we're scared and want to make sure that nothing will happen that will cause him to get gummed up in the process. I don't want to say he could get deported, because I don't think that would ever happen. But, that is a reality that we could potentially face.
Yeah, Christopher. So thank you for the question. That's a question that deserves a really thoughtful, comprehensive answer. So I can't do it justice in the time that I have. Look, the core bigotry that this president offers is bigotry against immigrants. And usually it's darker skinned immigrants. And we know what that's all about. And we see it again, just as he floats proposals to shut down New York and Connecticut on Twitter, he says we're ending immigration. As a practical matter, immigration in the sense of more people coming to the United States had largely come to a stop anyway as a result of CV-19. The immigration authorities and bureaucracy is operating at glacial speed, and that's not an accident. That is exactly what Stephen Miller wants. It sounds like your partner is protected by being part of the process. Let me say something really quick, which is tangential to what the question you asked, but which is really important. We're learning two things that I think are going to be helpful to the future of the discussion of immigration. One of those things is that when it comes to health, viruses and disease don't ask for passports. And that's one of the reasons the CARES Act said that immigrant, documented or undocumented, you get a test for free, no copay. The other thing we're learning that almost brings a tear to my eye, quite frankly, is that after 3 years of vilification of immigrants and of the undocumented in particular, of our president calling people who come to this country illegally drug dealers and criminals, we're discovering that they're actually essential to providing us with food. And so we're treated to the vision of people in the Midwest carrying around a letter from the Department of Homeland Security, and these are undocumented immigrants who are willing to work in those slaughterhouses, who are willing to pick those vegetables under 105-degree sun, carrying around a letter saying that they're allowed to go to work because they're essential to our food supply. Now, by the way, that letter doesn't protect them from deportation. It protects them from being stopped in getting to work. And I think enough of Americans to believe that when we think, wait a second, these are folks that were deemed to be essential workers. At a minimum, we're not going to vilify them. We're going to treat them with the kind of respect that any human being deserves. And I think if we start from that moral proposition, a lot of the rest of our immigration answers fall into place. Some of them are tough, right? We do need secure borders. We do need an orderly system of immigration. But if we start with that basic level of humanity, the output will be much more reasonable than if we start from where this president would have us start.
Thank you, Congressman Himes. Do you have time for one more question? I see someone's hand up.
Sure, quick question, if it works for you.
Diane Keefe.
Thank you. Hi, Jim. I just want to ask about the health policy that's likely to come out of the Biden campaign. I noticed he's proposed that Medicare go down to 60 years old. It just seems so gradual in response to such a crisis. Is there anything more that we can look to?
Yeah, great question, Diane. And I can't tell you I know the answer in a detailed way. I do know, and this I know disappoints some of us, I do know that the vice president is going to be very careful about jumping straight to a full-blown Medicare for all. And it's not because he doesn't believe in the idea of Medicare for all. He just is going to be very careful about telling the 70 million Americans who have private health insurance something that is politically very hard to say, which is, hey, we've got a better plan. So you're going to give up the plan that you have right now, and we've got a better government-driven plan. That's a very hard thing to tell Americans, particularly in places like Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, where this election will be won or lost. So do I share your point of view. I mean, I took the hard edge and I took the abuse associated with the Affordable Care Act in 2009, including I'll never forget this, 1,400 people showing up at my healthcare town hall meeting at Norwalk High School in 2009. So we have a lot of work to do, and it's frustrating. And remember, the Affordable Care Act was at the end of the day a pretty incremental improvement. It was not a dramatic improvement. It was a pretty incremental improvement. So Diane, we're gonna, I personally am a big believer in creating competition for the health insurance companies by giving every American who wants it access to Medicare. So it's a choice. It's a public option. That was something I fought for back in 2009, and sadly we didn't get it. But that would be a step beyond incremental to saying we're going to compete with the insurance companies, and every American will have access at a minimum to the Medicare system. But I think we need to watch this space. The Vice President, I think, is in the process now of figuring out exactly how to put together the right policies. And, there's no question that he has listened to and observed Senator Sanders and Senator Warren and has absorbed a lot of their thoughts.
Hello, Jim, Congressman Himes.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm not sure
Okay.
who that is, but I hear you.
I'm sorry, this may not be your wheelhouse, but this is an invisible enemy where they're dealing with. Do you have any data as to the availability of testing? Back on March 6th, the guy in Washington said that we would have tests for anybody who wanted to have tests. I don't think that's the case. Do you have any sense as to where we stand on the availability of tests?
Yeah, I do. And the good news is we've made pretty dramatic strides in the last 4 weeks. I mean, quite frankly, even here in the state of Connecticut, 4 or 5 weeks ago, we had almost negligible testing capacity. And it's a real tribute to our, people like Harry Rilling and David Martin and the governor and everybody, that they really focused on getting academic labs up and running, on making sure that private companies, the big private testers, were here, making sure that Stanford Hospital and Norwalk Hospital got the Abbott instant test machine. So the good news is we're in a heck of a lot better position here than we were 4 weeks ago, but we're still not anywhere near where we need to be. We're not at the point where everybody who really should get a test can get a test. Okay, so a first responder who may have been exposed but is asymptomatic, that individual should get a test. But today it's not clear that that individual can. Quite frankly, we eventually need to be in a place where we can do millions of tests every week. And experts vary, but we're doing roughly 1 million tests a week in the United States today. Experts vary somewhere between the need to do 10 and 20 million tests a week. So we've made real progress, but we are a long way from where we need to be, not to end this thing, but to give us the confidence that we can begin to open up in a robust way. And so again, it's sort of a good news, bad news story. The good news is because of the heroic efforts of people in Hartford, like starting with the governor on down to our mayors, to our hospitals, we're in a lot better place than we were, but we still have weeks of hard work. And quite frankly, of pushing the vice president, of pushing the private sector to get to a place where everybody who needs one can get a test, and where we can start to use national testing to give us confidence to begin to open up the country.